tell you a little story about why Detroit is near and dear to my heart. That way, when people are coming in, they're going to either miss the story or maybe they're going to hear the story and be like, okay, back in 2011, let's say, I was dating this amazing person, and we were both married before, and we were in love. We absolutely adored each other, and he very much wanted to marry me. And I said, you know what, I've been in a relationship, I have my children, you have your children, I don't really feel like I need to get married. And he really said, I really want to marry you. And as I think Katie alluded to, one of my passions, and I have a couple of funny hobbies that I do. Everyone needs an outlet. And I have two very interesting outlets. So when people say, what do you do for fun? I hang from ceilings and I stab people. So I hang from ceilings, meaning that I'm an aerialist, like Cirque du Soleil. So I do that. Only for me, for fun, but on my competitive side, I am a competitive fencer, so I play with swords. So way back, in 2008, I started about 18 years ago fencing, and in about 2008, I went to one of my national conferences, national competitions out in San Diego, and I won a bronze medal. And it felt great. It felt great to do that. But it was long in between in terms of other competitions where I was winning a medal. So what I said to this person is, I have an idea. If I get back on the podium at a national fencing championship, I will marry you. Thinking I wasn't doing that great. I had one wonderful bronze medal in 2008. It was already 2011. And I probably wasn't going to be getting a medal really soon. So I figured that would stave him off for a while. So when you're fencing, and it's the veteran fencers, so we're older fencers. This is not Olympics, but it's our Olympics. When we're fencing, we have what we call round robin, where we fence each other. And then we have direct eliminations. And when you have your direct eliminations, like a basketball direct elimination chart, if you win, you move on, and if you lose, you're done. So with the direct eliminations, you have to get to 10 points, or there's a time frame, and whoever makes that at the end of the time frame is higher would be the winner of that bout. And I was fencing a woman whose husband is a 5-time Olympian, which she's a pretty great fencer. And you have to get to these 10 points. So I was down probably about 2 points to her 7 points. And she just needed to get 3 points in order to win this bout and knock me out. And I wasn't thinking about anything else. And I got really focused that if you are somebody who's a competitive person or sports, you get into this flow state. And in this flow state, there's nothing you can't do. You're just in this state that you're there, you're focused. And I got into flow state. I don't know what happened. My coach was there, and I just kept getting points. So I got a point, and I got another point, and I got another point. She might have gotten 1 point, but I beat her 10-8. And that put me on the podium. And that was 2011, and that was downtown Detroit at your convention center. So I wasn't thinking about anything else about going up and getting my medal. And in front of 1,000 people, including an ex-boyfriend who was sitting in the audience, I went up to get my medal, and this gentleman got on his knee with this ring, and looked at me, and usually they'll say, will you marry me? But he just went, I know what the answer is. And I'm a woman of my word. So I said yes, and it was the best decision of my life. But I got engaged in Detroit, Michigan. And I've learned my lesson, and Katie actually has been on a little bit of a journey with me, because the World Veteran Fencing Championships are always in October. And Katie will inevitably ask me to be part of the hype that happens at their big symposium. And recently, she's asked me to come to this talk, as well as can I make it to the October one. So I've actually gotten a little bit better. Before the end of this year, I had made 3 World Veteran Fencing Championship teams. So I represented the United States 3 times in the world. And thank you. And when I went in, I said to Katie, I'm sure I'll be at the San Diego. I have a 5th place and a 12th place. And you really need to do pretty well to be top 4 in the country. Unfortunately for Katie, I sent her a picture of me with my coach with my silver medal a couple of weeks ago in Phoenix, Arizona, and said, I just made another world team, so I'm sorry I'm not going to be able to be there. So I learned, though, not to, never rule anything out, and to never promise anything when you think, you might actually have an opportunity to do something, and never to make bets with my husband on fencing. So, so I'm sorry I'm going to miss that. I will be representing the United States again. Anyway, okay, let's talk. We have about 35 minutes or so. I was told I have a little bit of time. I'm originally from the north, so you northerners there, I'm going to try not to have my northern, very fast voice on. When I speak internationally for people, they say you have to enunciate your words and talk like this. And when my husband, who's a psychiatrist, talks like this, I say that this is his doctor voice and I want to slap him. I will try not to go too fast, but what you're going to hear is that I'm really passionate about what I do and I get excited as well. My topic, in case said, okay, here's the net. I want you to talk about Huntington's disease. I said, oh, okay, to kids, because I wrote a book on that. No, not to kids. Oh, to X, Y, Z, no, not to all of that. And I said, okay, so I've got about a half an hour to do this. Sometimes people call this a smorgasbord, but in honor of my daughter who lives in Spain, I'm going to say this is tapas. This is a tapas and food for thought for all of you. It's just a little bit of a conversation, and in a very short period of time, I'm going to try to do all of this. So our agenda for today is we're going to do a tiny bit about talking to kids about HD, and that's children and adults. Talking to friends about HD, we talked about this just before. Talking to strangers about HD and talking to law enforcement about HD, but we know that Help for HD is very good at that, and I'll mention that. And I always like to throw in something about caregivers. So let's start. Talking about HD, what we know is not easy. And the question is why? Number one, there's no playbook. We can't say in this situation, this is what we do. And every family is different. I want you to think about when you are talking to anybody about your own experience, because what that's going to do is to set the stage in terms of how you feel like you're going to talk to other people. So if you came from a family that they didn't talk about this and there was a lot of secrecy or a lot of anger, that's going to come out in the way you present this. So I really want you to think about this, about setting the tone. Think about what worked for you as a person, what worked for you as a family, but think about what didn't work and what you would change if you had that time machine to go back and say, if I did this again or if my family did this again, how would we do this? And if need to, reach out to somebody to process your experience. That could be a therapist. I think that can be really helpful as well. Talking to kids about HD, what we know is that this is difficult. We have HD in a family, which is hard, but then having children in the family makes it a little bit harder. The thing is, not talking about this does not make it go away. And we do this because, in terms of not talking, is that we really want to protect our children. And that's a knee-jerk reaction. We think if we don't talk about this, that's going to be beneficial for them. But again, it doesn't make this issue go away. So just know, number one, that there are tons of resources. Jenna Highland from the HDO is out there, or the executive director. And on our HDO, and I'm part of my disclosure is I am a board member of HDO, that we have lots of resources on hdo.org in terms of talking to kids. There was a new video that we just approved that came out, which is 2 or 3 minutes long, about talking to kids about HD. So just know that there are plenty of resources out there. HDSA has information on their website as well, and publications. And then you can always Google talking to kids about HD. You'll see talks that I've given over the years. There's also my book, Talking to Kids About HD, that's on Amazon, Kindle, or something like that. So there's tons and tons of resources out there for you. But let's just do, again, topics in terms of this. Why should I tell my children about HD? Number one, a child is going to know that there's something different in the house, even if you don't talk about this. And this is from toddlers all the way up. That when you think about, you're having these discussions and a child walks in the room, or if you're upset about something and the child walks in the room, or that you're with a child someplace, it's very hard to turn on and off these emotions. So even though the words you're not using, there's an affect, how we present ourselves is going to be coming out. And a lot of times the child can say, what's going on here? Is there something that I did? So it's really important to know that children will pick up this affect. And you won't need to hide your conversations. Sometimes it's very hard when you're saying, I'm going to talk to this person, please don't discuss this in front of my child, or having these, what did I say to this person? What did I say to my child? I said we were going to be at a doctor's appointment, but I didn't tell them where or when. So it really takes a lot of energy to hide this information. And when you openly discuss it, you don't have to do that. Also, trust can be built up. A lot of times, and Katie asked before, how long have I been in this community working with people with HD? It's been over 20 years. So when I first started, those 6 years old children that I worked with and sat on the floor and played with Play-Doh are now 26. And they came back to me, and I've been a staff member at all the HDO North American camps that we've had, the 5 camps that we've had in North America. These young adults and children, young adults, come back and say, I wish this was talked to. I wish people talked to me about this. And there's an issue of trust that has to be rebuilt up in some of these families where, again, this is on protection. But again, it's that the children are saying, I just wish it was openly discussed. It would have been so much better. And know that fears are learned. And if you think about this, think about what you're afraid of. I'm not a huge snake person, right? If I see a snake, I'm afraid of that snake, or I'll change my behavior and go around, because that was taught to me. It wasn't that I came out of the womb going, snakes and spiders are bad. We learn these things. So if we teach children that you don't need to be afraid of Huntington's disease, then that's going to be a good thing. All right, what you need to think about. And again, remember, this is topless. There's only a couple of slides here. But I do want you to think about the age of the children. Caveat is, it could be a really young child, it could be a much older child. So obviously with a baby, you're not going to be like, oh, let's talk about Huntington's disease, right? But you can be open about this and make this the norm in your family and openly discuss Huntington's disease. Also, when you're talking to somebody and you're having a baby in your hands and you're rocking the baby, you're not going to be screaming. You don't want to have that kind of affect or be really emotional. You want to do this in a soothing way. And all the way up to that kid who goes off to school, or who goes off to a job, or goes off someplace, that it's really important just to think about the age and have age appropriate words you're going to be able to use. Also, the ability to understand. I have worked with 9-year-olds who can tell you, who can talk circles around Huntington's disease, down to the molecular issue, down to the pathology of this, and they get it. They've been around this and they understand. And then I talk to adults who give me all kinds of feedback in terms of what they think Huntington's is or where it comes from. And I have to correct those misunderstandings or the myths that they have. So it's really important to know where that child is in terms of age and their ability to understand what the words that you're talking to them about mean. I also want to tell you that I think it's really important to tell all the children at least something. I have a lot of family members who come up to me and say, I'm going to tell one child but not the younger children. Or I'm going to tell this other child because this other one is a worrier. And I think it's really important to remember that when you're doing this, all of a sudden you're giving this child this burden to say, I'm not supposed to tell my siblings. So either they're going to tell their siblings and say, don't tell, mom or dad or whoever the person is, or they're not going to tell, and then the burden comes back on them as well. So I think it's really important that, again, when I work with families that the age gap is 10 years or older, from the youngest to the oldest, but it's really important to at least give all the children the same information, at least if it's basic information. Okay, how should I tell my children? Start slow. You don't have to go into a lecture or a dissertation. It's an ongoing conversation as well. It's not a one-time deal. In terms of education, really find out from yourself, how can you tell you about yourself about Huntington's disease. Find out in general terms and in the terms that mean something to you, what Huntington's is so that you can educate your children about this. And know that they might ask these tough questions. Are you going to die? Is mom or dad going to die? Am I going to get this? And if you don't know the answer, especially about, will I get this? Then don't say yes or no if you're not 100% sure. Say, I don't know, and come back to that. So some conversation starters. I want to talk to you about your mom or dad. Check in and come back and ask what questions they do have. I want to talk to you about your mom and dad. You know that we went to the doctors and there have been some things going on that we weren't sure about. And what we found is that they have this thing called Huntington's disease. I didn't tell you anything scary. I gave you very concrete information. And then that's just a way to open up the door, a conversation starter. Ask the child what questions that they have. Ask, are you concerned about anything? A lot of times your children will say, no, I'm not, because again, they want to protect you. And there's something you can say. You might not be concerned about anything right now, but I know when I found out about this, I was concerned. So you're letting them know it's okay to be concerned. And you might not want it to upset me, but I'd rather have this open conversation. Or if you don't want to ask me, I can put you in touch with somebody that you can ask some of these questions. And always say, I'm going to check back in with you. This is not a one and done. Again, if you are worried about anything, please know that you can come to me and ask. I know that these can be upsetting at times, but if we learn together and if we find out together, then it's going to be a little less scary and we will get through this together. So here's some FAQs, frequently asked questions. I have not told my children about HD as too late. It is absolutely never too late. It's never too early, but it's absolutely never too late. Sometimes people say, I've been in the family for so long and I just never said anything to them, which is fine. You can say, now I have this information and I want to talk to you about it. I learned that this is really important for me to tell you about it. My child worries a lot. Should I tell them? I really don't want to tell them. In terms of worrying, I think part of that anxiety is that there's something going on in the house. And I'm not blaming that that's the answer or the issue going on, but sometimes the child needs to have actually more information so that they know. When we're upset or fearful or anxious about something, it's because of fear of unknown. So I think it's really helpful to be able to say, maybe they have a healthcare team, maybe there's a diagnosis that the child has anxiety or depression. Then if they have a whole team, let the whole team know what's going on, because then you have a whole community of support people who are able to help you through this as well. And a healthcare professional told me not to tell my children, what should I do? Again, healthcare professionals, we're human. And this might be their issue, their kind of baggage that they're bringing in, that they don't want to do this. I would say talk to the community, because a lot of people will tell you that when they've had this open discussion in the family, it's gone much better. All right, talking to adult children. So we're switching. Here's the next course of topics that's coming. Again, it's never too late, right? But there is going to be an added burden of a child saying, when did you find out? So you found out 20 years ago, you found out 7 years ago, you found out 6 months ago. Why didn't you tell me? And again, this is because I thought I was protecting you. I didn't know how to, I was afraid of this, but I learned through a conference that it's really important for me to be open and honest with you. So we're gonna have this discussion now. And use this education as a stepping stone. Again, I found out that it's important for us to have this open communication. I'm sorry that I didn't say anything earlier. I really was thinking that was the best thing I could do at that time with this information. Now I know different, so I apologize about that, but let's try to build this trust up again. Talking to adult children who have HD. So I'm speaking to you, all of you who are that sandwich generation, that you might be caring for a spouse or a partner, but also caring for a child with juvenile onset HD, or even an adult child who has Huntington's disease. I think it is really important, and we saw a little bit of that during the panel, that all of a sudden there was conversations back and forth. You've got to find your people. You've got to find your support system. Say, how am I going to get through this? How did you get through this? I think it's really important. Also, just know that there is family versus chosen family. So many of us in this room are chosen family. And I think it's really important. I put down the word expectations. We're saying my brother should step up to the plate, or my partner should step up to the plate. Those are expectations we're putting on somebody. And it might be that they're just not able to do that they're not there for you for whatever reason it possibly is. So it's really important to say, okay, what I've learned from that person is they're not going to be able to be there as a support person, whether it's physical or just when I'm having a bad day. I think it's really important to say, who are my people? Is there a support system, whether it's online through a once a week or once a month support group where somebody could just hear what's going on? The wonderful thing about this community is that when we walk in this room, no one has to explain what Huntington's disease is to each other. So that's a starting point. I think it's really important. Also, I think in terms of talking to an adult child who has Huntington's disease, you still have to set boundaries. It's not about a free-for-all because you feel bad or guilty that they have Huntington's disease. It really is important to put structure in place for adult children who have boundaries. And also, it is really important, if you are that person in that sandwich generation, to build in self-care for yourself. You need to take care of yourself so that you can take care of these people in your life. So talking to an adult child who needs treatment, this might be that heart-to-heart discussion. I need to talk to you about something that's on my mind. I know in the past you haven't wanted to talk about this. I need you to just to listen. There's an issue going on here. I want to be able to help, but every time I walk in a room, I'm walking on eggshells, and it's not helpful for you, and it's not helpful for me. I need to have this heart-to-heart discussion. This is not during a crisis. I'm going to come back to your question. Okay, hold on. You okay? Hold on. This is not during a crisis. This is when things are going well to say, we have this relationship, and I really need to have this conversation with you. It's really important that I do this. I promise I'll come back to it. All right, so more suggestions. Limits and boundaries, again, as I said, more communication is actually better than less communication. Open communication is going to be better than silence. Honest communication is better than non-disclosure about hiding this information. And as we talked about before, sometimes a situation needs to get worse for something to happen. So sometimes you do need to wait until there is a crisis in order to say, now we've got to get in, whether we have to call 911, we have to call somebody, we have to bring the person into a clinic or the hospital. Sometimes this does need to happen, and we recognize that as healthcare professionals. So when you do have an opportunity to get in the door at a clinic, at the hospital, again, when there's things that are a crisis, a lot of times the release information goes out the window. If I'm with somebody who is suicidal, I have the opportunity to contact a family member because it's an emergency situation. But a lot of times it's not an emergency situation. So I want you to think in the back of your brain that if you get through the door, whether it's a hospital, a clinic, whatever, make sure that you get, especially with that adult child, a release of information so that you can pick up the phone and talk to the healthcare professionals. Because a lot of times if that doesn't happen, then we don't have access to you and you don't have access to us. So a lot of times people will say, he, she, they, you're going to get angry or mad if I say something at the visit. When somebody brought this up at the Rural HD where that person is going, this person can't do laundry. And we know that as healthcare professionals, we look at somebody and they're saying, yeah, I played golf today and they're having trouble getting to the bathroom. We know that's the perception in our mind. But I think it's really important that when you say, I'm going to sit in the corner and be quiet, how is that going to be helpful? Because the situation at home, especially as Katrina was saying, where somebody has a lot of behavioral issues, is a living hell sometimes, and we understand that. So it's really important that you're able to say, I know they're going to get angry for a short period of time, and I'm not doing this to them. I'm not throwing them under the bus. I'm not telling on them. I need to have this open communication with the healthcare team. So I think it's really important that you don't stay silent at the visit. Now, you can prep and say to your loved one, if they ask you questions, I might raise my hand and say, that's not my perception about this. You don't have to do that, but you're giving them kind of this being prepared that I might do that. And then sometimes there's that dreaded ride home that you have to let them calm down. That's a whole other lecture that I give, but it's something that we can talk about if we have time. All right, talking to family and friends. So we just talked about this tiny bit in the panel. Identify who can offer support. I mentioned this before. It is about letting go of expectations of others to say, my brother should step up to the plate. My uncle should be taking care of his daughter. Those things, it's true. However, it's not always something that happens. And I work with a lot of people who spend a lot of energy saying this person should. And instead of saying, this is where that person is for whatever reason, it could be their coping mechanism. It could be that they are an adult who is at risk for Huntington's and doesn't want to face this themselves. It could be that adult child who says, I can't see my mom like this, so I'm not going to be the one who comes in and helps out for whatever reason, but that's their stuff. So switch your thinking in terms of expectations and say, who is it that can offer support? And when that person, whether it's that chosen family or not, raises their hand, then you can say, what can I delegate to that person? Can they give me some respite in terms of staying with my loved one while I go for a walk? Can they bring over a meal? Can they do something? It's a gift when you ask people to help. You're helping me as somebody who says, I want to help. You're giving me a gift so that I can feel better that I've done something. So I want you to switch your mindset saying, I'm not burdening you. If you say, how can I help? And I say, can you make me a meal once a week? And I say, yeah, that's a gift that you've given to me. So I want you to think and change your mindset in terms of that. Again, preparation, prepare. When we are anxious, when we are fearful, it's because of the unknown. So the more that we can prepare in terms of providing education about Huntington's disease, get that information for yourself, provide information about the person with Huntington's disease. And this is to that family. When you educate yourself and then say, here's the Reader's Digest version of Huntington's disease. Here's also information about the person with Huntington's disease. So let's see what we can do to make life easier for them. Know that some family members are going to notice changes, while others might not notice and say, he looks fine. What are you talking about? He's a piece of cake, right? That's not how he is 100% at home. And it might be that they're going to minimize, the family members might minimize the symptoms that they see. Again, that's to protect themselves. They don't want to see the family I'm working with has adult children and the woman says, I'm advancing, I know what's going on, and I can't talk to any of the kids about this. But that is also because they're at risk and they don't want to deal with this and they don't want to see their mom, who is the rock of the family, progress. So this is their way of coping. So what we know is that's not where you're going to get that kind of support. We're going to educate them about HD and they're all educated, but now we have other places where you can get some support and openly talk about this. The goal is not to convince somebody, the goal is to inform. And what we can talk to about for family in the family, for people in the family, is what gives that person with HD a sense of comfort. We just heard from Dr. Costa, that there's a video, a movie that this person likes to see over and over. That's a sense of comfort for this person. They were able to sit on this flight for hours and watch the same movie over and over again. What also should be avoided? So if we do something or say something, or there's a certain food or something that's going on that they don't like, that's a trigger, and let's try to avoid it. And also what you can do as a family, as a caregiver, is to normalize a conversation. So you can say to your loved one, Aunt Joe was always asking about how you're doing. I just want to let you know that I told them what's going on, so hopefully they won't bother you, he or she or they won't bother you so much. So you set the tone to say to that person, your loved one with Huntington's disease, I'm going to talk to other people about this, but it's to protect you so that they don't keep bothering you. So I might do that just so you're aware. So when family minimizes or won't change their traditions. So this is a lot of times around celebrations, holidays, different things that happen. It's really important, I think, as a caregiver of someone who has Huntington's disease, to advocate for yourself and the person with HD. It might be that you have one of these families that have these huge family reunions, which might be overstimulation for that person with HD. And what you can say is, I know we usually have these traditions. However, it's really overstimulating, and we can do something separate. We can come in the day before or the day after all of this and still see some people, but it will be less stimulating and it'll be less of a trigger for our loved one with Huntington's disease. It's also important to have a plan B and sometimes a plan C so that others, and you have to enlist others who can step in. So if you're going to a gathering, you say to your loved one, let's go. And if you want, after 5 minutes, if you're uncomfortable, we can walk out the door. Then you have to do that. If that person says, I tried, I'm in here, and I got to retreat to a bathroom or something, and if you said after 5 minutes we can go, you have to go. But let's say your children are there too. And if your children are there, you can say to somebody, remember I told you I might have to leave, but can you take care of my children for the next couple of hours so they can enjoy this? So you enlisted people and you have your plan A, which was everyone was going to stay at this party or wedding or whatever it was. But then you have your plan B and maybe your plan C. And don't forget to include everyone on the backup plan. You can't walk into someplace and say, I'm just going to throw this together and ask if this person can watch my children. You need to, unfortunately, be that cruise director and really start making these plans ahead of time. All right, frequently asked questions. We talk openly about HD in our family. Some extended family members don't want us to talk about it. What should I do? You can again be prepared to say in your family, which is our extended family, we openly talk about Huntington's disease. And I understand that might not be your MO, that's not how it works. I can tell you that I found out from research and from different people I talked to in the community that it's actually helpful to have these open discussions. I can't change your mind, but I'm going to let you know that this is how I cope and this is helpful for me. So this is what we're going to do. Or my siblings don't want my kids to talk to their cousins about HD. How should I respond? This comes up a lot. There's social media. There are people on Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, all of these different things. And a lot of times our extended family members are talking to each other. So again, it's to say, you know what, as your sister, I will agree that I will not have discussion with your kids about Huntington's disease. But the cousins are talking to each other all the time. My children openly discuss Huntington's disease. So I can't promise you that I'm going to say to my child, don't talk to your sibling, your cousins about Huntington's disease. I think it's really important just to set that stage. Now, what you can say to your sibling is, if your children come to me and ask, what's the matter with grandma? What I can say is, we openly talk about this in my family, but I'm asking you to go back to your mom or dad and talk to them about it. If they don't want to and they give you permission, or give me permission to talk to you, I'm willing to do that. So again, it's about being prepared. Talking to strangers about HD. I want you again to be ready to think in advance. And Katie has talked about these situations where she has had, when her husband was in a situation, when somebody was staring at them or saying something, she got him situated and then went back in and said, can I tell you about Huntington's disease? Because she saw what was going on. Number one, I want you to be safe. Safety first. I talk about that all the time with kids, with adults. If you're in a situation and that person is aggressive, who's making fun of the person with Huntington's, you get that feeling, I call it my spidey senses, that something doesn't feel right, get yourself out. But you can also think about things that you want to say in advance. Somebody is staring at your daughter, you seem to be curious. Can I tell you about my amazing daughter? Wear those t-shirts that Katie was talking about. Sorry, we didn't mean to push you. He has a motor disorder, so he couldn't help it. Can I tell you about it? 9 out of 10 times that person's going to turn on their heels and run away. But you might have that one person say, yeah, tell me about what this is. What is this t-shirt? What is Huntington's disease? And as I said in the panel, durable medical equipment can be a tool. So if you are in a situation out about with strangers, when you see somebody who has something, it doesn't mean that this cane or this walker or the wheelchair is something they need 100%, but it gives people around you an idea that there's something that they need some room and that there's something that's different. So it can be helpful to at least recognize that it's not about this person being intoxicated or on drugs or something like that. But the point being, I want you to think in advance about what you can do in certain situations so that you can practice that and then feel comfortable when you feel comfortable out in public to say, should I approach this person? Talking with law enforcement about HD, leave, okay? So Help for HD has done this and has done this well. I'm again going to give you another course of tapas in terms of what you can do. Contact your local police and explain the situation before there is a crisis. If you live in a town and you have a local police force, be able to go, I have somebody with Huntington's disease in my family. I have a sticker on my window, in my car, in my house. I want to let you know what this means so that if there's something and I need to call you, I don't have to explain it there. I want to have a relationship with at least one person in the police station say, hey, is Robin there? Can I talk to them because there's something going on here and I need to get some help. Teach them about HD, bring in pamphlets. Katie has all this stuff. It's free for you guys. This is their program. And it's really important to let the person with HD know the rules. And I'll talk about what this means ahead of time. So I do this in the office a lot. So the person with HD and the person, the caregiver, knows what to expect. And I'll explain what that means. So number one, create a profile for the person with HD so that you don't have to think about this in a crisis situation. Include a recent photo of them. Include all their medications, why they take it and how they take it. Include family contacts who will be available. Include your medical team, the healthcare team. And again, no release is necessary if there's an emergency going on. And also include in this one sheet that's on your computer, on your phone, in a file someplace, tips to help calm the person with HD down. Again, let's go back to that whole thing in terms of the movie that this person likes. And they just all of a sudden kind of calm down. Carry that I have HD card and as well as the caregiver emergency card. They're free, they're available to you. And in terms of that, the rules. Don't use, if you don't calm down, I'm gonna call 911 as a threat because it becomes this open threat and it's an open-ended threat. It's kind of like when you have that toddler at home and you say, if wait till your mother comes home or wait till your father comes home and mom or dad comes home after work and nothing happens. It's just an empty threat. So it's really important that to set limits, and if you are in a situation where you need to call 911, and that's what I do with people in my office to say, there's some stuff going on, and I want to let you know, if you're out of control, and that means that they are a danger to themselves, others, or destroying property, then your caregiver is going to pick up the phone and call us or call 911, whatever is appropriate. It's not going to be like, you better come down or I'll call, you better come down or I'll call, because that doesn't mean anything. But if there's a situation that it's about safety, you need to say, it's time that I'm going to pick up the phone, I'm going to call 911. So those are the rules ahead of time. The last part, caregivers. Know that caregiver burden can lead to psychological stress. This is documented. It can lead to depression and anxiety in us as caregivers, can affect your immune system, and can increase your blood pressure. All right, so we need as caregivers, many of you might have flown here, I flew here, I listened to the speech, I know the speech by heart, I actually looked like a flight attendant, I realized when I looked in the mirror. Your oxygen mask is going to come down, and you need to put your oxygen mask on first. Before I can help anyone else, I need to take care of me, all right? As caregivers, you need to find a place to recharge your battery. You don't have to hang from the ceiling or stab people like I did, okay? And people who walked in and have no idea what I'm talking about, that's on you, you got it here late, okay? Yeah. Join a caregiver support group. We talked about that it's online. You don't even have to get out of your chair to do that. And find good people, support people, and or a therapist that you can talk to. Take personal time to care for yourself. It is really important. And I'm talking about 30 minutes a day. That if you can, before or after work, or even though the people out here are 24-hour caregivers, can you find that 30 minutes? Can somebody just relieve you for 30 minutes so you can, for some people, meditate? It's not for everyone, I understand that. You can read a book, take a yoga class, just go for a walk, check out so that you can recharge your battery. Get sleep as a caregiver. It is really important. Get off of social media. Stop scrolling, okay? Set a timer for yourself and say, I'm done, all right? I know it's your outlet. I know you want to do it, but all of a sudden you look up and it's 2 o'clock in the morning and you haven't slept. It is real, and I see a lot of nods out there, and I know. And it's really hard to discipline yourself, but you've got to do it. Eat right as best as you can. I know that there are food insecurities for some people. Try to eat as best you can. So whatever we put in our body is food for our body and our mind. Exercise, which can just be walking, and go to your own doctor for checkups. You're bringing your loved one to all of these appointments. You know it's important that they're on medication and they're being followed up. Go to your own appointments. Go for all those things that we have to go to as we're getting older, but also your annual checkups. We need to make sure you're okay so that you can take care of that person with HD. And know that you are not alone. I think that's the take-home message for all of this. It's really important to know, again, I served you tapas. It was just food for thought, but I think it's really important to know that, again, you don't have to explain Huntington's disease to anybody in this room, but it's really important that you find your people. And it could be someone virtually, it could be that you reach out, it could be anything. But find your people, find the people who will support you and really try to connect with them. I think it's going to be really important. It's not going to solve the problems. It's not going to get you rested, but it at least will give you a place to say somebody knows what it feels like to be in a situation like I'm in. Not exactly your situation, but a situation that you're in. So I hope the topic was at least helpful for some of you.